The longer that I've been a Christian, the more I've come to realize that us as Christians, need to work definitely on our mental health. When I first became a Christian, back in 2019, I was a very broken man for things that that had happened to me during that time, before I became a believer. So when I became a Christian, it was very evident that I was going through a lot of mental struggles, traumas that had happened to me, battles that I was still facing mentally, and things that happened to me prior. You know, those things were still there. I was still fighting, a broken heart, for things that were happening in my family. I was still battling anxiety. I was still battling depression. And I was a Christian. So it is important for us to consider our mental health. If we need to take, some time, like 3 4 months, or even longer if it's needed, for us to go to therapy and separate from our ministries for a little bit, just so we can minister to ourselves. um, I pray that you could consider doing that. During that time when I first became a Christian, 2019, a lot of the fruits that I was showing back then, it was like, yes, you are saved, but you're clearly still, broken. You're clearly still, battling with things in your mind. It was really hard for me to, talk to people. It was really hard for me to not feel entitled sometimes, because of abandonment issues that I had faced. I felt like I needed to prove everybody something. So it is important for us to consider, our mental health, the patterns that are going on in our lives, the mental struggles that are happening, that are affecting everybody else around you. you know the Bible says in Proverbs 4:23, it says, guard your heart beyond, above all things, guard your heart, for everything that you do flows from it. So my prayer, if you're watching this video, is that you can evaluate yourself. Take some time to evaluate your life. If there is things that you are facing, in your mind, things that are happening, I ask, like, even battles that you face in secret. I pray that you can, speak to a leader, and bring those things to the light. Recognize that there is an issue. So my prayer for you is recognize those issues. Thank you.